All right, let's just jump right in. Picture this. You wake up one morning and bam, superheroes are real. It's not a movie, it's not a comic book, it's just reality. And at first that sounds amazing, right? Like you've just stepped into the most incredible story ever. I mean, the impossible is now just a part of your daily life. You're on your way to work, you look up, and there are people just flying. No wings, no jetpacks. The sky suddenly has a whole new kind of traffic.
Then you turn on the news, and you see footage of some guy stopping a tank with his bare hands. All those physics lessons you had in school, yeah, you can pretty much throw those out the window.
And it gets crazier. We're not just talking about super strength. We're talking about beings who can literally warp reality with the snap of their fingers, using these glowing stones. The possibilities seem endless, almost magical.
Okay, but let's just hit pause on all that spectacle for a second. What if you're not one of the heroes? What if you're just you, a regular person trying to pay your bills and not be late for work? What's your life actually like in this world?
Well, the truth is, once you look past the epic poses and the inspiring speeches, you realize you're actually living in a deeply, deeply unstable world. Your life, your home, your whole future, it all kind of depends on the whims of these gods and monsters flying around.
So that's what we're going to unpack today, the actual systemic reality of being an average person in the Marvel Universe. We'll look at the gods and all the collateral damage they leave behind, the messy politics of it all, the corporate greed that fuels the chaos, and what it's really like to live in the aftermath.
So let's start with the most basic problem, the one that everything else is built on. You're sharing a planet with beings so powerful that no government, no army, no institution can really control them.
And this chart really just lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got people summoning lightning storms and flying through warships. And on the other side, there's you. You're a barista or a taxi driver, or you work in an office. The power gap here isn't just big, it's cosmic.
What this means is you're living in a society with basically no safety net. Think about it. The safety of your entire city could literally depend on whether the superpowered person living downtown is having a good day or a bad day. It is an incredibly fragile way to live.
And this is where it gets kind of absurd. Look at this list. For a city like New York, things like alien invasions or armies of robots, they aren't some shocking once-in-a-lifetime thing. No, they're more like a seasonal annoyance. Like, oh, it's May, here comes the annual Chitauri invasion.
Can you even imagine trying to file an insurance claim for that? Yep, my apartment was destroyed by a falling alien space whale. The paperwork alone would be a nightmare. And it's not just a funny thought. It points to this constant, grinding destruction that makes any kind of real, long-term stability feel like a fantasy.
Okay, so with all this destruction, you'd think the politicians would step in, right? But how do you even start to regulate this kind of chaos? Well, let's take a look at how they've tried, and spoiler alert, how they've mostly failed.
So after one really bad incident in a place called Sokovia, the world's governments finally said enough is enough. They came up with something called the Sokovia Accords. It's basically an international rule book to keep superhumans in check. And you know what? On paper, that makes total sense. When you have people walking around who are more powerful than a nuke, a little oversight seems like a pretty good idea.
But here's the kicker. The result of trying to create stability? It was a literal superhero civil war. The very people who were supposed to be protecting you started fighting each other. And how did they settle this political squabble? By trashing an entire airport. So yeah, that didn't go so well.
And while the good guys are busy fighting each other, the rest of the universe doesn't just wait. The threats just keep on coming. And I'm not exaggerating here. You've got these world-ending threats showing up almost annually. It makes planning for your 401k feel a little pointless, you know? When some cosmic dude with a gauntlet could show up next year and wipe out half of everything.
So we've talked about threats from space, but let's be real. Not all the problems are coming from aliens. A lot of this chaos is homegrown. It's cooked up in labs, funded by corporations, and driven by good old-fashioned ambition and greed.
And this raises a really interesting question, doesn't it? You've got these massive corporations like Stark Industries with technology that could solve climate change or end poverty. So why is your life, well, pretty much the same? Why are you still sitting in traffic and dealing with power outages? It's because all that world-changing tech tends to stay in the hands of a few billionaires, often used to build better weapons instead of a better world for you.
Which leads us directly to what you could call the supervillain pipeline. Look at this pattern. Stark's tech creates weapons dealers and killer robots. Pym's shrinking particles end up on the black market. Every attempt to make a super soldier creates a dozen new bad guys. It's a system that's practically designed to create its own villains. The tech is just too powerful and too poorly guarded.
So let's take a step back. You've got gods fighting in the streets, governments in chaos, and a new world-ending threat every year. How in the world do you, an average person, just live with that? How do you function?
Well, the answer is kind of strange. You just adapt. You see some unspeakable horror from another dimension on your way to get coffee, you wait for the all clear, and then you get on the subway and resume your commute. You might even complain about the traffic caused by the giant crater in the street. It's this bizarre, necessary kind of normalcy.
So let's bring this all together. When you really pull back the curtain, past all the flashy fights and cool costumes, what you're left with is a world that is fundamentally broken. The whole system is just fragile.
Because here's the bottom line. Global security isn't based on governments or laws or any of the things we rely on. Nope. It's all resting on the shoulders of a tiny group of superpowered people who, let's be honest, answer to no one. The whole world is basically one bad mood away from disaster.
So if you somehow found yourself living in this universe, the best piece of advice I could give you wouldn't be to look to the skies for hope. It would be something much more practical. It would be start looking into insurance policies that specifically cover alien invasions.
Because in this universe, those are surprisingly common. And that, really, is the unsettling truth hiding behind all the action. It's a world that gets saved over and over, sure, but it's also a world that's perpetually one argument, one alien armada, one bad day away from complete and total collapse. It's an amazing spectacle to watch from a distance, but it would be an absolutely terrifying place to call home.